All of our webinars are recorded and archived on our website, farm2school.org, which is also where you will find additional resources related to Farm to School, including links to Farm to School contacts in all 50 states, which is the map that you're seeing here. If you're new to Farm to School or have questions about food safety issues, local policy, or other general questions, please contact your state lead after today's webinar. While you're on our website, you can also join our network and sign up for our email newsletter, which will let you know about future webinars and other special events. And if you stay tuned, I've got a little extra incentive to sign up to be a member of the National Farm to School Network that's happening during October. So keep an eye out for that a little bit later in today's webinar. Today's webinar is Farm to School 101. And before we get started with that, I want to get started by asking everyone a quick poll question. I'm just curious who you are today and who's joined us, how familiar you are with Farm to School and the National Farm to School Network in our webinars. So if you just take a quick moment to answer the poll on your screen, it'll let us know a little bit about who's with us today. We have one other poll coming a little bit later in the webinar after the presentation, so just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Okay, great. I appreciate that. Today's panelists include myself. My name is Chelsea Simpson, and I'm the Communications Manager for the National Farm to School Network. We also have Andrea Northup on the line. She is with the Culinary and Nutrition Services Department for Minneapolis Public Schools, and she'll be talking to us a little bit today about procurement. And then we also have Brittany Wager on the line. She's the Southeast Regional Lead for the National Farm to School Network, and she's based at ASAP, which is the Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project. And she specifically works with their Growing Nine Minds program. And she's going to talk to us about the education components of Farm to School. And then we have Jeff Bryant on the line, who is Executive Director of Urban Roots. And Jeff is an expert in school gardens and is going to share a little bit with us about what he knows. I'm going to get us started today because today's webinar is about Farm to School 101. I wanted to start by giving a basic introduction to what Farm to School is, just to frame the rest of the discussion. So basically, Farm to School enriches the connection communities have with fresh, healthy food and local food producers by changing the food purchasing and education practices at schools and preschools. So what this does is students gain access to healthy local foods, as well as education opportunities such as school gardens, cooking lessons, and farm field trips. Farm to School empowers children and their families to make informed food choices while strengthening the local economy and contributing to vibrant communities. So we like to say that Farm to School has three main components, and you can see those here on the screen. And these are the topics that we're going to be covering in today's presentations. So starting out with procurement, that is bringing local food into school systems from farms and other producers. Education, so bringing aspects of food and nutrition education into the classroom in various ways. And then school gardens, which is related to education, but is specific to growing plants and using gardens as a tool to promote other aspects of Farm to School, promote education, healthy eating, etc. So one of the most important questions of Farm to School is why? Why are we engaged in this work and why is it important? At the National Farm to School Network, we like to say that it's a win-win-win. Kids win, farmers win, and communities win. Farm to School provides all kids with access to nutritious, high-quality food so that they're ready to grow and learn. We know that kids do best in school when they have full bellies and when they're healthy and in good shape and ready to learn. Farm to School activities engage and enhance classroom education through hands-on learning related to food, health, and nutrition. So it's not just about the healthy food, it's also about the education components, as we'll hear a little bit later. Farmers win as well. Farm to School opens new markets to farmers and creates a huge new areas for them to sell their goods. And communities win as well from buying local producers and processors reduces carbon footprints and stimulates local economies. Education activities like school gardens and composting create healthy environments around the school. Just want to mention a little bit about the organization I work for, and today's webinar hosts the National Farm to School Network. NFSN is an information, advocacy, and networking hub for communities working to bring local food sourcing and food and agriculture education into school systems and preschools. So information, advocacy, and networking is the key piece of what we do. We have a network of 51 state leads, including DC, and 8 regional lead agencies that work with us across the country. Of course, we have national staff and an advisory board as well. And then the real heart of the organization in some ways is our members on the ground. Here's a little map showing you our regions. And one of our big things that we do throughout the year is celebrate National Farm to School Month, which is part of why we're having today's webinar in celebration of Farm to School Month. Farm to School Month was declared by Congress through a resolution represented by Representative Rush Holt in 2010. So it is an officially declared celebration. The National Farm to School Network led the first celebration of Farm to School Month in 2011, and this October we are celebrating our 4th Farm to School Month. So we're very excited about that. We've got lots of information on our website, farmtoschool.org, about how you can get involved. We've got resources. We've still got a couple weeks left in the month, so it's not too late to get engaged. One of the main things you might want to do on our website, as I mentioned earlier, is sign up to be a member or share a story on our share form. And during October, anyone who signs up as a member, updates their membership information, or fills out a story share form on our website will be entered to win $1,000 for a farm to school project of their choice. And you'll also be entered to win a prize from the Captain Planet Foundation, which you can read a little bit more about on our website as well. That's a fantastic garden kit that they offer. So without further ado, we're going to move into our first presenter on our 3-pronged approach to explaining farm to school today, and that's Andrea Northup with Minneapolis Public Schools.
All right. Hi, and happy Farm to School Month, everyone. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Minneapolis Public Schools and how we buy local food, and talk to you a little bit about some tips and hints that can help you buy local food regardless of the size or shape of your school district. Minneapolis Public Schools is a pretty big school district here in the upper Midwest. And we have a diverse group of students and a diverse group of schools in terms of kitchen capacity. So we're converting schools back to cooking from scratch, but most of our schools actually don't have kitchens, just have warmers. And then we have installed quite a few salad bars over the past couple years. So that gives you an idea of what we're working with. We have 2 designations of local product. The first is farm to school. So that's where we work particularly with small sustainable farmers in our region, many of whom are not familiar with institutional markets or working with schools. And we largely work with them through forward contracting. So we talk with them over the winter about what they'd like to grow for us and at what price, and map that out for our school year. And then we do some special purchases for events or trial runs of certain things. Our local designation is more for those larger farmers in our area that are already familiar with the institutional markets or wholesale markets in our region, and our large produce distributors or vendors are already buying from them, but we still like to support them too. We think about a lot of things when we're putting a farm to school or local item on our menu. You know, does it fit in with our menu? Can we store it long into the cold Minnesota winter? Does it fit in with our cost parameters? Is the quality of the product worth it? How much labor or equipment does it take for us to process that item? Do we have enough volume of it to work within our system? And is it one of those items that has been reported as highly chemically persistent, or something that harbors a lot of chemicals when grown conventionally that we might prioritize as a farm to school or sustainably grown item? Oh. I'm going to talk about this tray here. This is a picture I took a couple days ago of one of our school lunches. Something like that butternut squash there is a direct substitution, where we had a roasted butternut squash on our menu, but we could replace it with a farm to school item without changing our recipe at all. The cucumbers there were an instance where, in order to save costs, we had to slice those cucumbers in-house as opposed to having them come pre-sliced. So that's an instance where we changed a process to fit in a farm to school item. We've tried to get local greens. They're pretty darn expensive. So we're working on finding some alternate sources or finding some contracted farmers to make local greens work. Tomatoes we had trouble with too because our local tomatoes are so soft, ripe, and flavorful that they don't work with our slicers. Our slicers only work with hard, unripe tomatoes. So we're trying to fix that issue too. Our local turkey is a slightly different product with a different cook time and different processing requirements. So that's an instance where we made some changes to bring in a local product. And our local mashed potatoes are a completely different recipe. We used to use powdered mashed potatoes at our high schools, and now we've switched to actually boiling and cooking them from scratch. So that's just a sort of a map of a tray and how we may try and either directly substitute or make some serious changes in our processes to handle local products. Um, we use them in hot side dishes. A lot of storage crops work well here in Minnesota. We use them as cold side dishes or toppings. Those are local jalapenos that are on our taco bar. We have a cucumber salad there, a kale salad or coleslaw. Our salad bars are great venues for incorporating local products. We do local entrees, so this is a local hot dog and a local bun that we serve, as well as a sliced turkey product that you already saw a picture of earlier. In terms of our flow here, in most cases, food comes directly from a farm to an aggregator or someone who's pulling together produce from multiple farms, directly to our produce distributor, Russ Davis. Then it's either delivered directly to our school sites or our central kitchen here. Oh, trying to get to the next slide here. Chelsea, I think you might have taken me off the, there we go. Next slide. This is just an example of an invoice we have. Our farm to school designation is F2S. So you'll see under some of these products when they've been swapped out as farm to school items, we like to let our site staff know. In terms of some tips and hints with working with local farmers, definitely communicate with them, let them know what you're looking for, let them know where their product is headed. So this is some farmers, we're going over some food safety information and talking to them about what products we're hoping to buy from them. And then this bottom picture here is our farmers touring our produce processing partner. We also tell them pretty specifically what specifications we're looking for and again, where their products will be going. So let them know that we're using their green cabbage for shredding and coleslaw, which is why we need those tightly firm packed heads so we can plan out our, the yield on that product. When you're thinking about incorporating special or farm to school or local items, we find that special events help to both map out quantities and yields and purchases, and also to spread the word about farm to school to our school sites, to our staff, and to our partners. Speaking of partners, we can't do this alone, and we definitely work with quite a few different organizations here in the to find farmers, to train our farmers on food safety practices, to spread the word about what we do. Partners are key. And I just wanted to show you some pictures of the farmers that we work with. This is a farm that provides a lot of produce to one of the co-ops in our area, and we were able to work with them because some of the seconds cucumbers and green peppers that they grow didn't really work for the co-ops, and they had, it worked out for us to be their outlet for those items. The Hmong American Farmers Association is a group of Hmong farmers farming together on a shared plot, and in addition to a lot of farmers market sales, they're working on institutional sales with us through contracts. Oh, there we go. Another great young farm that was just handed over to some new owners are really interested in working with us more. They're doing our Yukon Gold mashing potatoes this season. Oh, I'm having trouble with this clicker here. This is our cabbage grower. He's awesome. And I guess that sums it up here. So I look forward to your questions later on.
Thanks, Andrea. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brittany.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the educational components of Farm to School. My name is Brittany Wager, and I, as Chelsea mentioned, am a Farm to School program coordinator with ASAP's Growing Minds program, and also serve as the Southeast Regional Lead with the National Farm to School Network. And a big part of what I do every day is helping teachers learn how to use Farm to School as an educational tool. At ASAP, we don't do a lot of direct work where we're going into schools, but we do a lot of training and technical assistance for teachers. Occasionally, we'll go out and conduct case tests or do things like that, but for the most part, we're really teaching teachers how to use Farm to School as an educational tool. So it can be just one more thing that they have in their tool belt to help them teach students. So this is a really fantastic graphic that I really like. So I'll try and leave this up here for a minute. So at Growing Minds, as I said, we really encourage teachers and other educators. People like school nurses are fantastic educators. School volunteers, people who are part of AmeriCorps, people who are part of Food Corps, and then even people who are, dietitians in the community or work for the health department. So we teach all of those folks how to weave farm to school activities into their workday. We help them learn how to use Farm to School as a teaching tool to teach the things that they need to teach. So this graphic is showing all of the different ways that a school gardening project can connect to different core subjects. A lot of times it's easy to think about how to connect gardening to science. You're planting seeds and doing seed germination and talking about, what plants need to grow. But it certainly is a little bit more difficult, perhaps, to think about all of the different ways that a gardening project can connect into social studies. But once you open that door and you start to think about agricultural history and how people used to grow and store food in your community before food was being brought in from other places, it becomes a really obvious connection to be able to make. So we hear all the time, and we hear this with Growing Minds, and I'm sure other people hear it as well, that teachers need to spend all of their time in the classroom teaching for the test, teaching for that end of grade test that's so important. And they don't have time to do things like garden projects or cooking in the classroom. So we try to frame farm to school activities as something that will help teachers engage their students in new and exciting ways while still meeting the goals of those end of grade tests. And so in order to accomplish this, we've developed lesson plans, which we have available for free on our website, that allow teachers to create monthly fruit or vegetable themes for their classrooms. So we have a whole Get Local at School calendar of products that syncs up to what what folks are able to source locally at that time of year, and then also with what the cafeterias are getting locally through farm to school programs that serve the cafeterias. And so, for example, this is a cucumber lesson that teachers are able to do in August or September when their school cafeterias are getting local cucumbers. And this gets students asking and answering questions about key details in text. It gets them using efficient strategies to count the number of objects in a set, among lots of other things. You can see all of those connections to NC standards and NC Common Core there listed out. And so those are all Common Core standards for students in North Carolina. In addition to giving students hands-on experiences that help them learn core subjects, we also view farm to school activities as a great way to build that connection between home and school. Cafeteria taste tests, classroom cooking activities, and school garden projects are really fantastic opportunities to send home recipe cards or other materials with students, which prompts those conversations between students and parents about the day's activities. or it inspires those parents to prepare fresh, locally grown food with their children. You know, it's when that kid comes home with a recipe card of something that they tried in school that day, and they're saying, "Hey, mom, you know, will you make this with me?" And it's a healthy recipe with locally grown ingredients. You know, it's the rare parent who will say, "No, I'm not going to help you cook that healthy recipe." So it's a really great way to start engaging parents in healthier behaviors too. So to help facilitate this, we will select recipes that use just a few ingredients whenever we do taste test or cooking demos, and make sure that all of those ingredients are affordable and easily accessible for most families. We don't want there to be an ingredient in there that's hard for them to get or that's going to be too expensive for them to purchase. In addition, farm to school activities are a really great way to engage these parents and other community volunteers. A lot of schools have the goal of more parent involvement, especially ones that receive Title I funds. And so farm to school activities can help schools reach those goals by providing opportunities for parents to be engaged in student activities. So farm to school is a great way to both teach students what they need to learn, but then also engage parents, which is another goal of school.
Thanks, Brittany. That was fantastic. We're going to move on to our next presenter, Jeff, who's going to tell us a little bit about how gardening fits into farm to school.
Great, thank you, everybody. Yeah, my name's Jeff Bright. I'm with Urban Roots out in Reno, Nevada. So we run a nonprofit, and so we try to connect with the schools from the outside and really try to provide a resource to the schools. And so, you know, for today's presentation, I want to just go through how we would start working with the school when we get approached. And the first thing we do is identify a community around it. And this involves administrators, teachers, the parent volunteers, and the groundskeepers. You know, the teachers are so busy, you know, as Brittany mentioned, trying to teach to the test and keep things straight, that they're not going to have time to take care of this. So how do we develop that community, that really solid team around maintaining the school garden? Once it's in the ground, how do we keep it going? You know, we ask the schools that we partner with to get two administrators, at least two teachers. We recruit parents. We help them recruit volunteers if for some reason the school's demographics don't really allow for parents to get involved as much. Then also the groundskeepers. Those folks really need to be involved as well. One of the first things that we go over once we establish that community and those key role players in developing a garden, we start looking at safety. You know, food safety is always a big one. You know, have a plan for your garden, washing your hands, plant the right types of vegetables that are very easy to process, things that don't require too much washing or too much cutting and those sorts of things. You know, cherry tomatoes are about as perfect as you can get for a schoolyard garden. But also the infrastructure safety as well. You know, some schools have run into issues where, you know, splinters are a problem with the boxes and things like that. Accessibility, those sorts of things are great to keep in mind. A lot of what Urban Roots does, it also works on curriculum. I won't hit it too hard. Brittany did a wonderful job talking about the cross-curricular connections. Those are a big focus of what we do. To work with schools and show them how, you know, an art teacher can be involved in the garden, or the language arts can be involved in the garden. You know, we also try to keep it open to the schools. When we go in and meet with them and talk with them, we don't give them a one-size-fits-all. Every school that we work with out here in Reno does things just a little bit different, where we have one school that's in our program that they do teach language arts in the garden. We have another school doing research for the Nevada Department of Agriculture in one of their labs in the high school. And so you can approach it from all different angles to keep kids involved, to keep the parents involved, and keep the teachers and administrators excited about what is happening in their schools. One of the biggest supports that we do give to the schools, and how we kind of pitch it to them, is we give a lot of training. We give a lot of resources. You know, once the parents or the volunteers are established, we work with them in grant writing and fundraising. Typically, most schools aren't going to have a budget to maintain or even build a school garden. And so we'll put them through seminars, we'll put them in touch with different funding agencies or opportunities here locally, where they're actually writing grants with the folks that are going to analyze the grants down the road. We work with the schools and the parents themselves to recruit volunteers. It's really kind of a dangerous part when you only have one person really championing the school garden, or if it's a parent that, you know, in junior high school or something that's really pushing for it. What happens to that kind of energy when the kid goes to high school the next year? The parent's going to leave, and there's oftentimes no one to take the place, and sometimes the garden will go derelict or become an eyesore, which creates frustrations for the ground staff and also the administrator. So it's having that system that, you know, helping the current volunteers or the current teachers help recruit those community ones, you know, parent-teacher nights or PTA meetings and those sorts of things, is a great place to reach out and find folks to really get involved to help maintain it, so that when the teachers are bringing their students out there, they can focus mostly on the education. They can focus on their lesson plans. Some of the other training that we do at our teaching farm, we actually bring teachers out to our place. We have an urban teaching farm here in Reno, and we put them through their own workshops. We give them continuing education credits for these. We write the curriculum for them based on state standards. It's also very easily to adapt to their teaching style, so that, you know, they feel a little more empowered about integrating the garden into their classrooms. It's not just a, you know, an extracurricular activity. It's very much a part of their lesson plans. And last but not least, I want to offer kind of a couple tips and hints for folks that may be on the call that are just kind of getting started. Is the biggest, you know, one of the biggest things I can recommend is plan ahead. You know, the best time to have a garden is the summer, and that's when, you know, most school districts are out on a break. And so be cognizant of what you're planning, working with the teachers to make sure they have what they need in their schools and their lesson plans. But also, what's the maintenance plan over summer? You know, it's if you'd like to have tomatoes in the fall, who's going to be there to maintain them during the summer? Is there access to water through the summer? Those sorts of things. Have a site plan. You know, if you're establishing a new garden, make sure you're doing soil tests and you're not planning on anything that could cause a danger down the road. Make sure you have great access to irrigation. Irrigation that can also be winterized very easily. And also plan your site to those classroom needs again. Talking with those teachers, how do they want to use the garden, or how do they foresee it? Work very closely with them. And then also, you know, really identify who does what support roles are going to be there. Whether it's, you know, if the teachers are the ones that really want to be in the garden or have one of their classes out doing a lot of the maintenance, or if they only want to go out and harvest basil for a teaching class or something like that. Identify who's going to do what, so that there's a clear picture of how it's maintained, how it maintains that aesthetic value that is really encouraging for folks to go out. But also if you're going to go into the garden, you need things that are growing, and it does take maintenance. At least out here in Nevada, it takes a lot. And so, yeah, that's my really quick 101 for getting it started.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you so much. Those were three really great presentations that honestly we could have spent entire webinars on. And in fact, the National Farmers School Network has hosted webinars on each of these topics in the past, and has other resources available on our website, farmtoschool.org, related to procurement, gardening, and the education aspects of farm to school. So I encourage everyone to check those out later after the webinar. But now we're going to move on to your questions, and we already have one in here for Andrea. We have someone who would like you to talk just a little bit more about how contracting works with farmers, and if you go through the bid process.
Yeah, the way we identify farmers to work with through a forward contract is through a bidding process. So we have like a request for farmers to, we basically lay out our needs for the upcoming season, and farmers bid on the quantities that they can provide of those needs. So for example, if we're forecasting 2,000 pounds per week of Yukon Gold potatoes, then farmers may say, I can provide those at X price per pound, delivered once every week, blah, blah, blah. So it is a competitive process to identify the contracted farmers, and we honestly use a very loose agreement with them because we understand that the weather and the season could definitely skew their needs, and our needs may change as well. You can find our documentation that we use to find farmers on our website.
And what's your website, Andrea?
It's really it's a long URL, but if you Google search MPS Nutrition Services Farm to School, you should find it.
That's great. And another question here, and I thought we would probably get this one. Brittany, where can people find that great graphic that you used that shows how Farm to School covers many aspects of education?
That's a great question. We scanned that out of a book a really, really, really long time ago. At this point, I'm not even sure where it came from, but there's a name on there, Vicky Greenhouse, in Lincoln, Vermont. So you might try Googling it and seeing if you can find it. It's also something that I bet we could put up on our website too, which is growing-minds.org. It would probably be worth putting it up there, so I will do that.
That's great. Thank you, Brittany. And I navigated back to this slide too because I know that your website's here in the bottom left corner.
Yes, my website's there on the bottom left, and you can also email me, brittany@asapconnections.org, and I would be happy to email it to you if you would like it.
That's great. Yeah, that's a really fantastic graphic. There's another slide here that I want to reference too, and let's see if I can find it quickly in Andrea's slides. Oh, I went right to it. So I just was curious, Andrea, because I think a lot of people define local differently, and I thought it might be worth touching on this slide of yours because I see here you are talking about what's really kind of two different types of local producers, and I thought it was worth noting that all school systems and communities define local for themselves. Really, there is no national standard of what local means that the National Farm to School Network has laid out. And I see here that you've got a group of general local farmers, and then you've got sort of a hyper local, which is what you're defining as farm to school. Is that right?
Yeah, and with the local designation, like I mentioned, it's a lot of farmers who are already in the regular institutional sales channels. And with Farm to School, we're trying to really focus on providing new markets for new, beginning small or, just underprivileged farmers in our area. So, whereas we our produce vendor already has a local carrot guy who has, a couple thousand acres of carrots. We could slap a sticker on that and say it's local, but we also are working with the Hmong American Farmers Association as they take new immigrant farmers and help them find new markets for their products to contract with them on carrots. And so it's a different it's a different venue. Both are very important to our local economy, and both are quite different scales and sort of have somewhat different goals for us.
So, in other words, you want to make sure that you're really working to expand markets, not just picking the sort of literal and proverbial low hanging fruit of local.
Yes, but I will reiterate that both are important, and both mean we are spending our local dollars on local companies.
Right. That's really awesome, and I think an interesting distinction that you've made. And I think it's worth mentioning too that as far as the National Farm to School Network and a lot of other organizations go, we of course would put the farm to school label on both of these. And I think for you would probably agree this is all farm to school, but for your purposes you've made this separation, which I think is a really interesting way to break it out. Any other questions from any of our attendees today? Just go ahead and type them into your control panel. Speaking of questions, we have one more question for all of you. We just want a little bit of feedback from our attendees today on how helpful this webinar has been. So if you could just take a few moments to answer the poll on the screen, and then we'll get back to our Q&A session here in just a second. Okay, while everyone's finishing up voting, Jeff, just wanted to ask you a couple of garden-related questions. You said that you're based in Nevada, is that right?
Yeah, Northern Nevada.
Yeah. And so, how many different schools did you say that your organization has worked with or helped promote?
We've worked through about 15 schools. We consider a handful of them graduated where they've developed a sustained school garden model, and then we typically work between 8 and 10 pretty actively. In Reno here, it's actually quite a large school district. There's 105 schools here, and so it's a very small part of the pie, and it's only been the last maybe 3 to 5 years that the school gardens and farm to school and those sorts of things have really become talking points in the district out here as well. So we're kind of at our beginnings of it.
That's really exciting. I think it's interesting to show that I wonder how the climate issues in Nevada. This is one of the things with farm to school across the country, whether it's gardening or procurement or aspects of education. It just really varies a lot from place to place based on what your climate is, what you can grow, what your season looks like. What are some of the key places that schools seek funding for their school gardens, and how they get those started?
Um, there's there are a lot of them. One of the first ones that we really send people to is we have a local fish and wildlife office here, and they have grants for up to $8,000 to do kind of native habitats. But in those native habitats, you can do a lot of kind of local foraging in the garden too. That's a great one to get things started. Where essentially we encourage them, to build like pollinator beds and those sorts of things around the outskirts of where their garden might end up. It's a great way to get access for funds for the actual systems, though, infrastructure and those sorts of things. Whole Foods, their foundation, they're actually pretty generous with giving out their $2,000 grants. About half the schools that we work with have been successful in getting that one out here. And there's a lot of small, the corporate America ones where they'll anywhere from $500 to $1,000. A lot of the schools for fundraising, though, once they get established, we really encourage them to kind of get the kids involved in the economics of food as well, talking about food systems. And so we work with them with kind of developing on-site farm stands, or maybe at the end of the year, one of the schools we just worked with did a big fundraiser and used a lot of the food from their garden to put on a dinner for parents where they were kind of raising money and those sorts of things. And then we actually offer one through our program. Once a school graduates, we give them a $500 donation so that they can continue with their garden work.
That's really awesome. So, Andrea, I have another question here for you. One of your earlier slides highlighted a sheet that you sent to your schools that noted which items on that they were receiving were local. Did that information come from your distributor? Was the distributor highlighting the local items, or did you do that on your end?
So that was actually a poster from our Minnesota Thursdays event, which is where on the first Thursday of every month, we specifically source an all local meal for all of our school sites. And that's where we choose the farms and we choose the products. So that is coming from our end. Some of the local items that where our distributor may report to us on what's local are more of on a regular ongoing basis, whereas for that event we dictate where things are coming from.
Okay. Yeah, I think there was also, in addition, I do remember the poster slide. I think there was also something that looked like an invoice in your presentations, and I think that this question is sort of getting at, like, is your distributor pretty cooperative with you about helping let you know what's local, and if not, like, what are some tips or ways you can talk to your distributor about getting that information?
Sure, yeah. They're not only helpful, they are crucial to our farm to school program. We have basically established a process with them to bring in products from our farm to school farmers once we've assured that they have the food safety requirements in place and the knowledge about, how to pack and deliver products to a wholesaler. And that process involves workshops and informational meetings and phone calls and follow-up visits with these farmers who are not used to delivering into a loading dock at a produce wholesaler, and working to figure all of that out. And then our processor, Russ Davis, substitutes in the farm to school products based on some parameters we've set up. And then basically when a school orders cucumbers and Russ Davis swaps in the farm to school cucumbers, that school's invoice reflects that with the little F2S code. That was what I was showing there in that sample invoice. That's how the farm to school items work.
That's great. Thanks for that explanation. And that's really nice that they're able to highlight that for you.
Yeah, it's critical to our program, but also it's giving them a lot of national attention, or sort of sorry, local and national attention and new business, because they're willing to do that. So I would definitely, if you're talking to a distributor about starting to do more uh, reporting of where things are coming from, you can tell them that it actually could be a competitive edge for them to be at the forefront of this movement and doing that.
Thanks, Andrea. Another question about resources. Brittany, you mentioned that you have lesson plans on your website. And Jeff, this is kind of a two-part question, I think. Jeff, do you have any lesson plans on your website related to gardening?
Yes, we do. Yeah, our website is urgc.org for Urban Roots Garden Classrooms. And yeah, there's a resources page up there. I don't know, right now there might be about a dozen different lesson plans. A lot of it is also what we use in our summer camps, and recipes and things like that that we work with kids on so the parents can get access to them. But we are in the process of literally putting all of the curriculum we've been writing up there. We're hoping to have it all there by the beginning of December. It's an
Fantastic.
ongoing project, but a lot of it's there.
And Brittany, I bet that your resources include some garden related items as well on Growing Minds as well.
Yeah, we have garden lesson plans, as well as classroom lesson plans, and what we call recipe lesson plans, which are cooking in the classroom activities that are written with how a teacher would do it. So where you set up the teacher station and how you set up all of the different classroom stations depending on how many kids you have. And so those are all available on our website, growing-minds.org. Underneath our resources tab, there's a link to lesson plans, and then it takes you into the grade level and some of the different topics. So you've got preschool, K2, and 3-5.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Brittany. That's really great. So I have we have time for just one or two more questions, I think, here. Another question about a specific slide, and that's the spec sheet for farmers that you shared, Andrea. And let's just see if I can get back to that quickly. Because I agree, it was really helpful. Have I passed it?
Not yet.
There it is. What was your process for developing this? Or do you have a template? Or what would be your advice for somebody else looking to put this together?
We worked with a combination of the folks who make our recipes here and our produce processor. So Russ Davis not only takes in our produce and cross-docks it if we're delivering whole cucumbers to the schools, but if we need those cucumbers diced or sliced, they also have the equipment to do that. And so it's a question of looking at our end product, whether it's a slice or a dice or a just having or quartering an item. We look at what the equipment that is used to do that, what the needs are of a particular piece of equipment. So if it's something that a cucumber has to fit in the long ways, then that cucumber can't be curved. But if we're doing it with a knife, the cucumber could have a curve in it. And working with the farmers to figure out what is realistic and reasonable for them. For example, we have these uniform diameter minimum 1-inch carrots on this list, but it was a terrible carrot season, so our carrots are much smaller. And we are basically only using them in shredded carrots, as opposed to diced and roasted or coined, or even carrot sticks like we had originally thought we might use. Um, so yeah, it's a combination of looking at the end result, the equipment you have, the recipes things call for, and what the farmers can actually grow.
And you touched on something there that is another question that we had just come up, and that's about the role of a processor. So it sounds like in your case, your distributor is also doing some processing, but I know that in a lot of schools, processing happens in a variety of ways and can actually be a barrier that schools have to overcome when they try to figure this out. I know that some schools, the distributor can do processing. Sometimes they work with a processor that's kind of a middleman between either the farmer and the distributor and the school. Or you also mentioned that you have some in-house slicers and that equipment procurement piece, getting the right equipment to process fruits and vegetables properly in your school. These are all some things that a lot of schools have to figure out.
Yeah, and back to that slide I showed at the beginning, we have such a range of schools, ranging, those that have salad bars, those that don't, those that have kitchens, those that don't. And so we range from schools being able to take in a whole cucumber and cut it themselves on site to a school that doesn't even have a 3-compartment sink and can't process anything, has to have that cucumber come in a little plastic baggie. Um, and so, you know, it just gets back to looking at your menu, looking at what equipment you have and what equipment you may want to invest in, and then working backwards from there. Can you handle cosmetic imperfections? Can you handle scars or odd sizing? Which will get you a better price, but it will increase the price of labor, or logistics to get it to the point where you want it.
So I think that's the end of our questions today. I'm just going to go back to our final slide because I want to make sure that my contact information is here on the screen. These were fantastic presentations, and I had at least one question here from someone who would like to get in touch with one of the panelists. We don't have all of their contact information individually on the screen, but if you would like to reach out to me at chelsea@farmerschool.org, I'm happy to connect you. If you had a question that didn't get answered today or would just like more information, feel free to reach out. This webinar was recorded, so if you missed part of it, we're having a little bit of technical problems getting this on our website at the moment, so be patient with us, but this webinar will eventually be on our website, so you can catch up with what you might have missed and, of course, and importantly, share it. And so we're really pleased that you all joined us today. I hope you have a great rest of National Farm to School Month, and a special thank you to each of our 3 presenters. So with that, we're going to wrap it up today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.